accessed the podcast of OA. Located deep within Sector 14845 and powered by the Emerald Light of Will, the podcast of OA is your guide to the Green Lantern universe. Hosted by Lantern Myron Rumsey, the podcast of OA begins now.
Hey, Green Lantern fans, welcome back to the podcast of OA. This is episode number 251. I'm your co-host, Myron Rumsey, and joined by my friend on the other end, Mr. Phil Bova. If you can tell by those watching on YouTube, Phil and I are adorned in our Godzilla and Kong shirts because tonight we are talking about Justice League versus Godzilla versus Kong, the 7-issue miniseries that came out this past year. Part 2 was recently announced as coming out, I think, next year. So we've got a lot to talk about when it comes to that. And we've also got, as expected, an awful lot of listener feedback. I think the epic rant we had in episode 250 about the casting of Kyle Chandler got a lot of response, which I would expect,
Understandable.
That's right. That's right. But before we get into that, it's been a little while since we recorded. I took a little bit of a vacation, came back, and I've been in full on Halloween mode. For those that don't know me, I really get into Halloween in a big way. In fact, I'll probably put a few pictures up here of some of the display I've been working on. But my yard is kind of the attraction of my neighborhood. We get about 350 to 400 trick-or-treaters every year, and I always feel this pressure to outdo myself and make it better every year. So I've been out there working hard for the last week or so, getting caught up on that. But once this dies down and November hits, I think we're going to see a lot of content coming your way, and I'll be happy to be doing that. In fact, something to mention now is we're going to be getting together with our annual Green Lantern content creator uh, coming get together as a community and having a State of the Green Lantern Universe episode with the Lantern Cast. They usually host that. And I believe we're recording in early November. So that'll be a lot of fun. I'm sure there won't be any controversial topics there, right?
November. That's November 6th for recording. I think that.
Yeah, I believe so. I believe so. So keep an eye out for that when it comes out. But in terms of Green Lantern news, since it's been a little bit a while since we've been out here chatting about Green Lantern stuff, there's been a bit of stuff, especially with regard to McFarlane. I mean, boy, he is unleashing Green Lantern content like gangbusters. I mean, there's a Sinestro's Parallax figure out, which I think is a Target exclusive. There is a new version of Hal Jordan in his modern uniform with a metallic-y finish that is a Walmart exclusive. There's an effigy figure that's out. And then they announced at New York Comic Con a Superpowers Alan Scott, which is part of a 3-pack with Golden Age Starman and Hour Man. They announced a collector's edition of Guy Gardner and a collector's edition of Simon Baz, which I know, Phil, you're going to be the first one to buy one of those.
Yeah, but I got a question for that. What exactly makes a Simon Baz collector's edition? I mean, I mean, you know,
It doesn't have a gun.
I know I joke on Baz a lot, but you know what? He's still around. Well, what can I say? He's still hanging out.
He's there, get mask and all.
I'm gonna get. I do have the Simon Baz one up here on my shelf somewhere.
I do not own a Simon Baz figure. Right? I don't think I have anything with Simon Baz.
Yeah, he's in the very, 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 very back up there.
Is he standing next to a Batman figure?
No, I don't have any Batman figures. You won't see Batman on my wall. It might be like a sporadic little tiny one, but no, there's none of that crap down here.
He's propped up the corner of the shelf, right?
No,
Keep it level.
resorted to my toilet paper roll.
Uh, there wasn't a lot of Green Lantern comics news out of New York Comic Con. There was, a little bit of detail about Absolute Green Lantern by Al Ewing. It mentioned a little bit, they showed some artwork. And it kind of mentioned, and I don't know whether this is confirmed or not, but that Joe Mullane will be the featured character in the book. But the artwork they showed a non-Green Lantern version of Hal and John. So apparently those characters are involved in this, but to what extent, I don't know. We'll see.
That's a lot of push, though. I would imagine that McFarlane might have some kind of deal with Gunn. I mean, usually, like when you got like a big push in merchandise or otherwise, because just wait, the Superman fiasco has not even started yet, and they're gonna market, what out of that. But I'd imagine some of this stuff is a precursor to what's going to be coming out. I mean,
Yeah.
Gun, you got to hand it to Gunn and company. They're not gonna like. I don't think they're gonna short bait anybody. I think they're gonna bring it to the table, and I know. I know, and minus that one caveat towards that ruined your life. There'll be disappointments, I'm sure, and every corner of the internet, there's a disappointment to be had and to be found. So, I mean, I don't know. I don't I don't care as much as I used to anymore. I just hope that it's decent, and something good and something that can be like, okay. I was like, we went and seen The Wild Robot, and the movie blew me away, and I was in tears. Now, I can't tell you the last time I've ever cried at a superhero movie. I don't think that's ever happened. I didn't even cry when Superman died in the last one. But anyway, that being said, I think they're going to bring it to the table. I think it's going to be okay.
We'll see.
We'll see.
I'm
Shirts, like we'll see.
we'll see, right? Right. Speaking of lanterns and the Gunverse, Jon Stewart has been cast. Aaron Pierre was one of the two finalists the last time we spoke. He's been officially cast, and I'm not familiar with James Hawes's work, but apparently he's a well-liked, well-respected director, and he's directing the first block of episodes.
I
So,
mean, they got a good creative team behind it. I mean, it's the same team that did. Have you ever watched Ozark?
no, I have not. I have
I
not.
mean, dude, man. I mean, that series just blew my mind. Even my mother was into it at the time. God rest her soul. She didn't get to finish it, but I mean, it was just a really, 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 really well-written show. And I think with a good creative team behind it, maybe it'll glaze over some of the animosity you have brewing inside of your lantern soul.
Time will tell, right? We don't have any product. We don't have anything to judge it by just based on our notions about the casting. So,
Yeah, but
as
the internet's the internet. It's got to prejudge before it gets judged, and then gets
yeah,
judged when it comes out. So, I mean,
but if they made good decisions, it wouldn't be a problem.
I mean
Um,
that's also a fair point, ladies and gentlemen.
anyway, let's not dwell on that anymore.
Mhm. Moving
We've
on.
we've got a 7-issue miniseries to talk about in Justice League versus Godzilla versus Kong. And I've been interested in talking about this with you, Phil, because we both love kind of the old monster movies and stuff like that. And so, obviously you love Kong, I love Godzilla. I like Kong too. Don't get me wrong. Um, but
I'm the same way with Godzilla.
yeah,
Godzilla's just cool. I mean,
yeah.
seeing them both team up. You watched the last one, right?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
It, the, I like. I mean, I'm sure everybody's whatever. It's a spoiler or not. When he got the mechanical hand, I was a little like, okay, I mean, maybe. I mean, that's cool and all, but really, do we have to do that? That being said, it's Kong, so I'll let it slide. But it's cool when those two team up, man, because
yeah.
you can't stop them too.
Have you watched Godzilla minus one?
Oh God, I loved every second of that
Yeah,
movie. I mean, it
fantastic
was
film.
just done well. I mean, and that's just it, done well. I mean, that's all you can say about it. It's done well, and that's just the end of it. You don't have people railing on it hand over fist like every every other movie out there. I
Won
don't even
an,
think there was a critical note written about that
yeah,
movie.
won an Oscar. Uh,
Yeah,
it's back. It's gonna be back in theaters, in fact, in November with 13 minutes of additional footage. Not sure if I'm going to go see it or not, but
but people will pay to see that
yeah,
because I mean, they did it so well. I mean, it's like the Shogun series. I mean, gosh, I mean, it's done well.
I'd have to
Hopefully we'll
drive.
have that.
I'd have to drive 60 miles in each way to go see it because I don't have an AMC theater near me.
Oh
So,
man, that's dedication.
yeah, I don't know whether we're going to do it or not. We might. But anyway, let's take a quick break, and when we get back, let's dive into Justice League versus Godzilla versus Kong.
All right.
This is Salak, Green Lantern of Sector 1418, and you are receiving the podcast of Oa.
The podcast of
Welcome back, everybody. We're here to talk Justice League versus Godzilla versus Kong. 7-issue miniseries, story by Brian Buccellato, and art by Christian Deuce. I'm assuming it's Deuce. It may be Dust. Not sure. It was interesting. This whole story had a very Super Friends Legion of Doom feel to it.
Yeah.
Would you agree?
Yeah, that's kind of how it felt to me. I mean, because Luther and all them being involved, it was
Yeah.
kind of made sense.
We literally had the Legion of Doom. Even
Yeah.
in the first issue, they use Super Friends as a way to refer to the Justice League.
Right.
It was kind of thrown out there. In terms of timeline, it's interesting because this takes place in a DCU in the multiverse where Barry hasn't revealed himself to Iris yet, and Clark Kent is on the cusp of proposing to Lois Lane. So it's a bit of a difference there. And in terms of the MonsterVerse, it appears like this takes place after Godzilla versus Kong. But what's odd is in Godzilla versus Kong, in that film, when it ends, Kong is left on Hollow Earth, but here he shows up on Skull Island. So it's a little fast and loose with the continuity, but again, it's a multiverse of MonsterVerses too. So who knows which version of the MonsterVerse is here?
Do you think, and this is a side note question referring to continuity, because we've always had continuity issues, right? So do you think they're trying to streamline things to make them more cohesive to where people can understand continuity a little bit better? Because I'm not going to lie, your average reader and average viewer is not gonna, I don't know, maybe not grasp the concept of what a continuity may or may not be. And I guess maybe I'm probably giving the public too much. Maybe I'm not giving them enough credit, but it just seems to me like the continuity thing. I mean, Marvel's doing the same thing with their Earth, whatever they have going on with the time police with Loki and stuff like that. And a lot of times continuity kind of gets confusing to me. This
I
one here,
Yeah,
I mean, this one here was fine. I just kind of figured this was an offset universe, but I'm
yeah.
not sure what Earth it took place on.
No, they never really said it. I kind of looked at this
Yeah.
as this is an Elseworld story, right? Uh,
Exactly what I was thinking myself. Okay.
I think DC, in terms of continuity, with this all-in initiative, they're trying to be open and welcoming to new fans. And let's face it, there are comic book readers out there who don't really care about continuity. They just want to read a good
Right.
story.
True.
So you've got people like ourselves who grew up feeling like continuity was this tightly bound knot of events. And that's where we struggle with some of these things because it doesn't fit perfectly. Uh, and I look at something like this kind of a crossover, just like, the Green Lantern Star Trek crossover or the Green Lantern Planet of the Apes crossovers. These aren't real stories. You kind of have to take everything that takes place here with a giant tongue in cheek because the writers may not necessarily get all the facts about everything. I remember
True.
the Star Trek Green Lantern team up I thought was done quite well. And I remember interviewing the writer and he did his research, but he wasn't really gonna dig into the minutia and let that bother him in the story he's trying to tell. And obviously this is just like that. This is done for fun. It isn't done for seriousness.
Right. And that's kind of what I was figuring when
Yeah.
just reading it. Kind of like just a I mean, it's kind of like Tom Taylor and his offshoot, different approaches to the DC universe. This one's kind of got a different approach to it. And I think they should incorporate more of the monster universe in this. I think that would be cool if they
Yeah.
expounded on it a little bit more.
I thought it was nice. There are nice if you're a fan of the Masterverse movies, there's a lot enough of that mythology sprinkled throughout. You see monarch facilities and the creatures that they use by and large are from the Masterverse films. So they're using those assets. Um, I think you've got a writer who understands enough to write a story. Is everything as accurate comic wise or Masterverse wise as you would think it would be for a major production? No, but it's not a major production. So
Mm.
I just looked at it as, if some movies are popcorn movies and some movies are film epics, right? You've got movies and you've got films. This is a movie, not a film.
Well,
Uh,
and it does help that they're all the licenses are owned by the same company. So
Right. At least for now.
It makes it
Uh,
easy for a crossover. I'm waiting for Scooby-Doo and Godzilla and Kong crossover. That'd be kind
crossover. This issue does start out right away with Godzilla arriving in Metropolis, which I thought was, it was interesting. There was no real buildup. Godzilla's just there. Clark is getting ready to propose to Lois. They're on the roof of the Daily Planet, and he's just about to propose and pop the question, and Godzilla shows up, and off he goes. And we get a flashback to kind of tell us how it gets to this point. How did the Monsterverse and how do the Titans arrive? Well, the Legion of Doom breaks into the Fortress of Solitude. They're there to steal a mother box and Orion's sled. Toyman sees the Dreamstone, which, if you're not familiar with the Dreamstone, it's connected with Dr. Destiny. It's basically a wishing stone. And that triggers an alarm, which makes the Justice League arrive, sans Clark and Superman, because Superman has been trying to like work overtime so that he can take a break and propose to Lois and not be distracted and leaving the rest of the Justice League and the rest of the superhero community to take care of things while he's maybe taking a little bit of a vacation. And so when they show up, there's a bit of a battle at the Fortress of Solitude. Things go bad. The mother box is damaged. There's an explosion. It sends the Legion of Doom to another Earth where they arrive on Skull Island and they see Kong fighting a skull crawler. And that's pretty much the first issue. It was a lot of fun. If I'm looking at through my Green Lantern lens, I thought Hal was written a little bit like a jerk, and he only really creates big fists. Written, but obviously written by somebody who he's touching just certain notes, right?
That's right. Let's give the writer his credit.
Yeah,
Cool aspect between Gorilla Grodd and Kong, you know. I'm thinking that has that whole aspect could have a whole comic book itself.
right. And that was what was one of the things, hearing about this, I'm like, boy, well, how would Grodd react to Kong? It's such a perfect
Mhm.
connection.
It
And,
is.
and and as the story progresses, we do get to see some of those interactions, which is a lot of fun.
It is.
And we find out that Toyman, he basically, he's the Booster Gold of the Legion of Doom, and he uses the Dreamstone to bring the Titans to the DC universe, at least this version of the DC universe. And so the Titans have started attacking everywhere. You've got Skyla attacking Central City, Behemoth is going after Themyscira, and Camazotz is attacking Gotham, which is cool because he's a giant bat type creature.
Right.
And so the superhero community obviously is trying to take care of these Titans, not knowing who they are, where they come from, none of that kind of stuff, which is kind of comical because that means the Monsterverse doesn't exist as a movie franchise in the DCU, at least this version of the DCU. Otherwise, they might recognize them from the movies.
That's true.
Uh, so the Bat family teams up with Cyborg and Black Canary, and they use Black Canary and Cyborg to take out Kamazats. Now, they don't kill Kamazats, they basically knock him unconscious. Hawkgirl and Superman try to stop Godzilla, but he is just, as the star of the franchise, he's too much for those two people to take down. Shazam shows up and he tries to say Shazam and use the lightning to strike Godzilla. It does, but then he starts falling as Billy Batson. Superman goes to save Billy Batson and Godzilla lashes out, and Superman is air quote killed by Godzilla.
Again.
Again. Yep.
I wonder how many times you got to use that plot device to move the story along, right? I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
insert who we're going to kill here. Not that I'm trying to diss the writer or anything like that, but at the same time, it's like,
It's a
I mean,
trope.
why did it have to be Superman? Like they couldn't have come up with a different scenario to move this story along besides putting Superman
Yeah.
on the table for a while.
It's what I like to call a stunt death, right? It's
Mhm.
it's done because it's a trope that's just pulled out and thrown out there because they need to get Superman off the table for a little while or whatever. Um,
Well, not to mention the fact that I mean it's Superman, so he would technically speaking be able to stop all of them, right?
well, yeah, Superman
So
and Green Lantern could take them all out.
right, so there's your first issue. It's already done. You don't even need the whole
Right.
other six.
It's a mini.
Exactly.
Um, the other interesting thing that takes place in the second issue is Green Arrow arrives on Skull Island because as he's flying with Wonder Woman, they realize, hey, this island isn't on the map. because Skull Island doesn't exist in the DCU proper, at least this version of the DCU. So apparently, it isn't just that Toyman brought the Titans to the DCU, but he brought all of Skull Island. That's how he probably got them there. So he's there. And again, looking at the issue 2 through a Green Lantern perspective, Hal doesn't really get to do much here. And again, there's some snarkiness there, but you know. Third issue, Hal Berry and Supergirl take on Skyla, and Supergirl leaves because she realizes she can't hear Clark's heartbeat anymore. So she's obviously very, very concerned. Meanwhile, Godzilla kills Atom Smasher in Metropolis as he shows up to try to help deal with the Godzilla situation. And then Supergirl and Shazam, do a cute team up punch to Godzilla, and they kind of knock him unconscious or at least get rid of him for a little bit. Meanwhile, everybody's trying to find the Toy Man. No one knows where he is. But then the Titans start acting like they're being called by a beacon. And if you have watched the Monsterverse films, that's been used on a couple of occasions to try to manipulate or control the Titans in this situation.
This would make for a really, really cool animated,
I was thinking the same thing, and this would be cool animated.
You could do this in a good hour and a half, just to,
yeah.
Small one. I think it'd be awesome looking. And it'd be fun to watch too. I was also thinking about this is a funny thing, but if you read all these books, you watch all these movies and everything, I think about the property value lost with all this crap.
Well, yeah, right. This is like, this is the normal superhero, supervillain combat stuff times 100,
Right. I'm sorry. Godzilla tripped over a building. Well, that's about 2 billion.
And they don't have Titan insurance in the DCU.
Right, the studio has that.
Right. There's some interesting things that take place on Skull Island in the third issue, in that Green Arrow sees Kong fighting Warbat, and Supergirl arrives coming back to Skull Island after returning from Metropolis and taking Superman to the Fortress of Solitude. And there is the great Kong-like reaction to the Beauty and the Beast analogy from Kong, and he sees Supergirl as being potentially the Beauty. So that was kind of cool. I really like that kind of a callback to classic Kong interactions.
Yep.
And then Lex finds a facility in the desert. I'm not going to try to pronounce the desert because I would slaughter the name, and I don't want to do that. But he in the desert finds a facility. I'm assuming it's an Apex facility from the Monsterverse because of what happens next. But he has access to the files that they have in the facility, whether it's a Monarch facility or an Apex facility. It isn't clearly outlined, but I'm assuming it's Apex.
That's what I was gonna say. It wouldn't have been Monarch though.
Yeah, I wouldn't think it would be Monarch. I think though Apex has access to the Monarch files, and that's what he was getting to. Again, this issue, Green Lantern perspective, Hal could take Skyla out by himself, right? Any Green Lantern could. He proves ineffective. Barry has to rescue him. There's that kind of trope where, Superman and Green Lantern, they either depower them or they kill them, right? In all of these big events, because they're too powerful characters to deal with this, to make this a threat. So That's how they're dealing with it. And basically, they're shown as ineffective. And if it sounds like I don't like the story, that's not it. But I'm looking at it purely through a Green Lantern perspective and being a little clinical and analytical about it. Of all the characters, he's probably the one who's written the poorest, in my opinion.
Maybe when he didn't have a lot of dialogue anyway. Everybody else has a lot more dialogue.
Right. I mean, I don't know how, like Billy Batson and Shazam reacts very, I don't want to say poorly, but reacts very harshly to themselves. Like they start beating themselves up mentally because they believe that they caused Superman to die.
Right. But coming from a kid's perspective,
yeah,
that would make sense why that would play up as emotional content.
Yeah, it fits. It fits, right? I mean, Green Lantern being ineffective against a giant monster. I mean, you compare that to JLA, The New Frontier, when he hauls the thing into space all by himself,
Right.
Yeah, but whatever. It's the way things are. Issue 4, of course, Batman starts piecing everything together because Batman does Batman things, right?
That's what Batman does.
Yeah. Kong assists Green Arrow when he discovers the League of Assassins are on Kong Island or Skull Island, excuse me. Then Hal brings Lois to the Justice League satellite because they moved Clark because they realized that the Titans, Godzilla was heading towards the Fortress of Solitude because the Legion of Doom are using these beacons to target specific places, and we'll see more of that as that happens throughout the rest of the story, but they're targeting certain locales. So no, Lex Luthor, knowing that they would probably take Superman to the Fortress of Solitude, has put a beacon there, and Godzilla's being drawn to the Fortress of Solitude. So they move him to the JLA satellite. Hal brings Lois there. They have a moment. She has discovered the ring that Superman left in his clothes pocket. So she knows what the dinner was really about. So then she starts looking for Toyman and talking to Mercy Graves and trying to track where Lex is because she, of course, she's a very smart woman. She's like, where I find Lex, I'm going to find the key to all of this.
And she's got a lot of resources.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, Barry, Hal, and Diana head to Atlantis because Atlantis is under attack by Tiamat, which is another one of the Titans. So they're fighting underwater, which I always find it funny to see the Flash fighting underwater.
I know. I was kind of wondering why they shoehorned him in there for a team up. It's like, what's the point of doing that? I mean, sure, you got a breathable mask on and stuff like that. I assume that he could still, I mean, he does rotate his
His
arms
arms
underwater.
to make
So
the water move. Yeah. It's just comical, Guy who can run really fast. I assume he can swim really fast too, right?
yeah, I would assume that's how it works.
And what I think is one of my favorite moments of this story is Aquaman releases the Kraken.
Yeah,
So
that was
you have Tiamat and Godzilla and the Kraken in a three-way battle above Atlantis, and they're trying to protect Atlantis because the dome keeps getting cracked as these monsters, these giant monsters are fighting underwater, which is pretty cool.
and that's kind of funny with the cross of the mythos, right? Because Kraken's always been from Greek myth, or quote unquote, it's a loose Greek myth, but at the same time, then you got the mythos of Godzilla and Kong, and coming from their monster verse.
Yeah, I thought that was such a cool thing. I really liked that moment when and even Hal has one of the funniest lines. He's like, tell me he just released the Kraken, that was kind of fun. And then Green Arrow finds out the League of Assassins stole a very large skull from Skull Island. So I thought it was a fun issue. To me, the story was getting better as we go along. In this issue, from a Green Lantern perspective, Hal does a bit more. He's not written quite like a jerk. The fact that he's bringing Lois to the JLA satellite and doesn't say something stupid, which was the first thing I saw. I was like, oh, they're going to make him say something stupid and asinine. They didn't, which was good. So props for that. Uh, but it was interesting watching them fight underwater and them trying to deal with these giant monsters underwater, which makes it even much more difficult. So that's halfway through the story. It was a lot of fun. Issue 5, Lois gets more information because Mercy Graves gives it to her, and Lois and Supergirl start to look at the Monarch files and try to use that to their benefit because they're trying to study it. It turns out that the Titans, the Titans in the MonsterVerse, Godzilla is there to keep the natural order of things.
Right.
And when they're transported to our Earth or this version of the DCU Earth, the presence of the meta human community and superheroes has caused an imbalance that they're trying to rectify. That and the manipulation from Lex. Um, Atlantis nearly falls. Godzilla breaks the dome as he drags the Kraken down into the deep. And then Aquaman and Wonder Woman chain Godzilla to the bottom of the ocean using the chain that was holding the Kraken. So Godzilla is now off the plate. So you've got the two apex characters. You got Superman off the table, and you've got Godzilla off the table.
Smart.
Yep, yeah, it was a good way to do it. Ali escapes from the League of Assassins, but doesn't know what they were there doing at all. Supergirl goes back to Skull Island to find out what's going on with Ali, and she's trying to recruit Kong because she's reviewed the Monarch files, and they are of the opinion that of all of the Titans, Kong is the closest to a good guy in the group. So they're thinking, well, if we can get King Kong on our side, at least maybe we'd have somebody helping us against these giant monsters, and maybe he can take care of it, right? As we talked about, Shazam, he's blaming himself, so he goes after the Legion of Doom and gets himself captured. Uh, Grodd, when Kara gets to Skull Island, Grodd is there, and they're all worshiping Kong, which I thought was great because it's that whole, the sequence in the classic Kong movies where the people living on the island are singing to Kong and
Sure.
worshiping Kong. And so in this case, Grodd's followers are taking the role. So you kind of see that playing TikTok. And I love it when they do those little nods and touches to things. Lex, then he's now he's in control of Mechagodzilla. So we've got a Lex powered Mechagodzilla coming, and then we find out that that giant skull that the League of Assassins was after is given to Ra's al Ghul for some mysterious purpose. And in this issue, the arrival of Jon Stewart, Guy Gardner, Jessica Cruz, and Simon Baz. They come to save the day because Hal is holding the dome together. Like Godzilla is broken the dome. So Hal is using all of his willpower to try to hold a dome over Atlantis with all of the thousands of pounds of pressure. And eventually gets to the point where he can't do it. And who arrives in the nick of time? The rest of the Green Lanterns. So for me, this was one of the best issues through a Green Lantern perspective because the Green Lanterns actually got to do something useful.
And it was cool the way they all showed up.
Yeah, yeah.
Good to see Simon.
No Kyle though. No Kyle Rayner.
That is kind of weird. I don't know why they
Yeah.
would choose to use Simon Baz of all people and not Kyle Rayner, which is more well known. But
Yeah, yeah.
I give up questioning writers' prerogatives anymore. Sometimes I just don't get it.
Well, it's like you don't know whether like did DC say here are the characters you can use? I doubt it, but those kind of things happen. I know and I'm following that DC Heroes United game, and they have to get everything cleared through Warner Brothers and DC before they can publish anything. So all of what they write about the characters, the way they sculpt the characters, all has to be approved. So I'm not sure whether they've indicated to the writers that, well, here's the assets we were allowing you to use. I don't know. I,
Imagine being on that team, right? The team that like how much stuff comes in and how much time they have to approve it, you know?
right.
I
Well,
mean, it probably takes forever.
you wonder what lens they look at it through. Like, is it just that they use the characters okay, or is it they only want certain characters to be used because these are the characters that we're going to use in the comics? So we want to make sure you're focusing on the characters we're focusing on. I don't know.
I
It's
mean,
interesting.
it's probably like a hella criteria that I don't think I could ever get behind.
It's probably some guy locked in a basement who rolls a dice. You just find out. Uh, so we jump into the penultimate issue 6, and we find out that in universe this event has been going on for about 10 days. And while Godzilla is chained to the bottom of the ocean, 3 of the Titans are headed for Metropolis again because they're being drawn to the Mechagodzilla signal, which has activated itself. Lois finds Superman's body is missing, and then we get a little bit of a flashback. We find out that Superman was teleported by they took the teleporter or the stuff on the Justice League satellite and they created a boom tube and sent Superman's body to the sun to be rejuvenated because it was that badly damaged, and he comes back supercharged.
Of course
Um,
he does.
of course, and then he rescues Billy Batson, and then he goes to the Justice League satellite and finds Lois.
Well, let's not
Uh,
forget. I mean, don't leave out Batman's super bat suit
yeah,
because
yeah.
he'd have something like this just laying around, you
Yeah,
know.
well, they showed in issue 5 that they started building something, and they didn't tell us what it was. They were selling something. They were using the Flash's treadmill and some other stuff to make something to deal with the situation. And yes, Batman shows up in a giant bat bot, which I don't know how familiar you are, Phil, with Godzilla lore, but do you remember a character called Jet Jaguar?
I don't.
So Jet Jaguar was like this robot that can make himself super large and fight alongside Godzilla as a teammate.
Huh.
Okay, it was the 70s, all right,
It
uh,
was.
he's a kid's toy that can become giant. But he shows up, and then the Green Lanterns make that they go all Voltron and make a giant construct Green Lantern robot with each one of them controlling part of the robot, which I thought was cool, but very predictable. It's like one of them could have made it. They could have made five giant robots, right?
Well,
Um,
to be fair, and to be in the Green Lantern's defense, right? I mean, they're constructs, right? So
yeah,
they're the ability of the mind to form together and come together, just like Voltron does.
yeah.
But on that note, think about Batman's lame. You know what? You got to imagine it's 10 days, right? You're talking 10, well, 12-day flashback. So let's just say for the sake of argument, 10 days, right? So it took that 10 days to get that much material together and mass produce this gigantic robot he had. And where was the workforce involved in this?
It was all the heroes. They were just, super speed. Wally was helping them. The Titans were doing it.
I guess that's what the excuse is going to be.
Well, but again, to
Eh,
the whole Green Lantern thing, it's neat to see them go all Voltron, but we've
yeah,
seen Kyle and Hal make giant constructs by themselves.
right.
So
Right.
you could have had five giant characters there, but I guess it'd be hard to keep track of, right?
It would. I'm still cool with the first one, but just this one. Not as cool as when Kong gets the ring, though, but
Right, right. Well, Kong does show up, and Kong and the mind-controlled Supergirl shows up with Grodd. So they jump in as well as the Legion of Doom. So this is like an all-out melee in throwdown in Metropolis. Metropolis would be dust by the time this is done. But let's not forget the League of Assassins also show up with some more skull crawlers and like this giant skull crawler that has like a skull that we saw earlier there. Um, it's just, everybody's there right now except for Godzilla and Superman. If you can
yeah.
imagine all of these characters in one place having a giant battle. I mean, at least thank goodness Rodan isn't there and a couple of the other ones because it's only just certain ones.
So on a side note, Gardner gets smushed, right?
Yeah, he gets squished in the next issue. Yeah,
Right.
in issue 7.
I would
Um,
have to say that. Go ahead. Go ahead.
well, I was just gonna say the issue ends with Superman meeting back up with Godzilla saying we need to settle this, right?
Right. Right. Right.
Um, but I felt like the yeah, oh yeah, it isn't guy gets squashed this issue. Um,
Sure.
they they start fighting Kong because Kong is mind controlled. And Kong rips off one of the arms, and Guy is that arm. He's that leopard of the he's that version of Voltron. He's the arm of the Voltron robot. And he lands, and then Grodd jumps on him and squashes him and kills Guy Gardner. And then after that happens, it's like Aquaman shows up to protect the Green Lanterns from the Legion of Doom.
And I will say that those are my three favorite panels in this whole entire series. Was the one where the Grodd says, kill Fishman too," and he says, "You're welcome to try," and he's just standing there staring at each other. The three best
I
panels, and that's all the dialogue it took. It looks
I
so
thought it was cool, but I was like, man, the Green Lanterns just got treated like C-listers.
yeah, they kind of did get chumped up.
Like Aquaman's got to protect them. Really? The giant robot was cool, but and
It's what
and
it's come to, man. I mean,
Grad squashes Guy Gardner. I
yeah,
mean,
that's a little amiss, right? I would have thought Guy
yeah,
would have seen that coming,
right,
or
right.
at the very least, been able to battle,
He literally
Grodd a bit.
jumps on him and kills him.
Yeah.
I mean, come on. But anyway, there's a reason. There's a story-driven reason because we need to do this next thing. So we get to the last episode and Toyman's body is found. Superman finds Toyman's body. And Toyman was crushed by Godzilla when Godzilla first arrived in Metropolis. And so they find the body of Toyman, but they don't find the Dreamstone. Again, the battle is still going. How any building is left standing in Metropolis after this, I have no idea. But Superman does show up with Godzilla, so we go from a huge battle to a super gigantic battle. Kong is getting choked out, and so Guy Gardner's ring goes to Kong, and Kong makes a construct axe like you see in Godzilla versus Kong, and starts cleaning house. So Godzilla shows up Green Lantern Kong is teaming up with him, and so the two of them kind of clean the whole mess away, with the exception of Mecha Godzilla, who the superheroes tear apart.
Well, and then the bat, what is that called? Super
The
bat
the
suit,
the
Supreme
Bat
bat suit
Bot,
one, the
yeah.
bat bot. I don't know, whatever. He comes in and does a backbreaker on the old, oh Mecha Godzilla.
Well, of course, you're like, while everybody's struggling to do anything, the Bat Bot is taking on Mecha Godzilla and Kong at the same time. I
Yeah,
mean, but Batman.
yeah.
But then what happens is you discover that when Superman was under the water with Godzilla, he finds the Dreamstone, and it was stuck in Godzilla's foot from when he squashed Toyman. So see, Godzilla wasn't mad. It's a whole case of, the lion's got a thorn in his paw. He's got a Dreamstone stuck in his foot.
Just trying to get it out. He needed somebody to help get
Right.
it out. It's like that pesky hangnail, you know?
And then for me, the one moment that made me cringe was they're talking about Guy Gardner, and they're making fun of the fact that Guy Gardner was a pest while his dead body's on the ground.
With that agonizing look on his face.
Yeah, he's got this awful look in his face. And honest to
Yep.
God, they're there, and Superman goes, "I'm so sorry about Guy. I liked him. He was," and Hal goes, "hard to like." Simon Bay goes, "an acquired taste." And then Jessica Cruz goes, "that lingers." I'm like, their partners, their comrade's body is dead on the ground, and they're still making digs at him. I was like, that's kind of a cringy thing at best.
Calling it how it is, though.
Yeah, it may be honest and truthful, but it's maybe not the best piece of decorum.
It is a
Uh,
little harsh.
and seeing Kong with the ring was fun, but you knew that what kind of stuff was going to happen.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, this is the cover of the last issue, which I love.
Yeah, that was cool
It's
cover.
cool looking. But he gets a Green Lantern ring and then it flies off for some unknown reason. It's tropey. But at the end of the day, again, this is not a film, it's a movie. So
Right.
all in all, did you think it was a fun story? Did you
Oh,
enjoy it?
it's fantastic. I loved it. Loved every bit of it. That was cool. I thought it would, like I said, I thought it'd make a cool animated, you know.
I agree. I would much rather have seen that than the Justice League and Ruby movie. I would rather have seen this. Um, I thought it was a lot of fun. Take it with a big tongue in cheek and try to dismiss some of the things that seem out of character, like them making fun of Guy Gardner's dead body. Uh, if you can ignore some of those things, it's a lot of fun. Just seeing the DC characters interacting with the Masterverse characters, just like in any of these team ups, just like in the Green Lantern Star Trek thing, seeing Hal Jordan sitting in the center seat of the Enterprise, cool as heck. Uh, this is the same kind of thing. It's a lot of fun. They pull in different elements of the Masterverse and stay very true to that. So in the end, did I enjoy it? Yeah. Would I go out and buy it in a collected book? If the price was right, I wouldn't spend a lot of money on it. But if you enjoy the Masterverse stuff and you haven't read it yet, it's definitely worth picking up because it's fun. If you're just looking for a fun way to spend an afternoon and see kaijus fighting against the Justice League and the Legion of Doom and seeing an all-out battle, I think it's a lot of fun.
You know, it Green Lanterns did a Planet of the Apes crossover too, didn't they, a while
Yeah.
back?
Yep, they
Yeah.
did. Did now the question I have for you is they Superman uses the Dreamstone to send the Titans back. Do you think Superman undid all the damage? Because he
With
could he could he could bring back Guy. Who else died? Toyman died. Um, and Adam Smasher died. And it seemed to be somebody else might have passed away too in this book. Do you think he undid it all?
well, if they do part two, that might be what we figure out.
Right. I'm thinking that might be part of part two. Do we see what happened when it comes to that stuff? Because I can't imagine him. I mean, there's an ethical question of do you use this to undo wrongs? I mean, that's the whole thing that Emerald Twilight and Hal trying to undo the wrongs and trying to
Right.
restore things. Is Superman, doing the same thing with the Dreamstone? I don't know. It's hard to say. because he'd be doing something that was improper. He would be doing it wrong to fix something that was wrong in the first place.
Yeah.
Is this a case where two wrongs do make a right? Uh,
But well, if Batman were to do it, it'd be okay. If Superman
well,
does it, he's gonna get
sure. I
judged,
mean,
right?
right. Superman, we're gonna question the morality of it, but if Batman did
Yeah.
it, well, Batman's just being Batman.
Right. Well, and then they deconstruct Superman to the point where like, well, would he hold on to his Midwest morals, or would uh would Clark Kent be more of a like a city approach to it when he moved to the big city and got corrupted by whatever, that's they deconstruct,
Right.
Super
Right.
Batman would just be Batman and they would just chalk it up to it's just Batman because he can
I
do it all no wrong.
Yeah, I'd like to think that Superman would have used the Dreamstone to undo it simply because it was an unnatural thing in the first place. But if that's the case, then it makes all of the loss meaningless. The
Sure.
weight of the story is meaningless. So I could go either way in any of it. I can see him doing it, but then I can also see him saying, well, I've had this Dreamstone here. I could have undone a number of things in the past, and I've never done that. But I can also see this was used improperly to create havoc and destroy Metropolis. Because I mean, you look at the end when he's proposed to Lois and they're there talking about their future, and Metropolis doesn't look any worse for the wear.
It could be years later. Well, I don't know. Time moves different, right? It took him 8 days to build a mecha Batman suit. So maybe continuity, they brought stuff over from another Earth and rebuilt with it. Maybe they brought over Metropolis from Earth 27 and just put it in its place.
Yeah, I don't
I'm
know.
ripping on continuity just for ripping on
Just
continuity.
for the sake of it, right? I think if that's one part of the story that is left very unclear is what all did he do other than send the Titans back and Skull Island? Don't
But
know.
like you said, they got greenlit for a second part, which would be kind of cool if they played that out. I'm all for a second part. I think they should. I don't see why they wouldn't. It
Right,
was a great story. I mean, this is a great standalone. Doesn't have to be perfect. Doesn't have to fit in any mold either. So it's just
right.
kind of nice to read by itself.
It's a standalone thing, which
Yeah.
which like makes it like I said, you're looking for something fun to read in an afternoon. This is worth reading.
Yeah. It
Um,
is.
and I wonder, if they're doing a sequel, uh, how will they bring the monsters over? Or will the Justice League go to the Monsterverse universe?
Mhm. That's a good question.
So
Okay.
it'll be interesting to see what happens. I'm kind of looking forward to it to see what spin they put on it.
Well, they're playing it loose. I mean, they got storytelling potential. You know what I mean?
Sure.
If you're not held to any constraints, it makes it kind of nice because then you got all full liberty to do whatever you want with whatever plot devices you choose to incorporate.
Right.
And that's what makes it fun about stories like this, and that's what makes them neat where they stand alone. And then, like you said, you don't have to worry about like being beholden to something else happening someplace else, right?
Right, right. And I thought the use of the Dreamstone was creative because I had forgotten all about that thing even existing.
Well, not only that, but I forgot about it. As the story was going on, I was like, all right, they're looking for the Dreamstone. I wouldn't have, I would never have thought it would have been in the Godzilla's foot. And when
Yeah,
they revealed that, I'm like, oh, come on, man. Why didn't I
yeah.
think that?
Well, my eyes rolled. I'm like, oh, really? Um, but I guess it makes more sense than it being in some Godzilla dung somewhere where
Yeah,
he might have eaten it.
exactly.
It was one way to resolve it. I mean, the fact that Toyman dies is the result of his own actions is interesting. I should say interesting. He gets his comeuppance, right? He's tampering with things he shouldn't be tampering with, and he pays the ultimate price. Uh, how else I would have resolved the Dreamstone myself? Like when I see things like that, and I'm like rolling my eyes, I'm like, well, how would I have resolved it if I was writing it? I don't know how I would have done it. And having it being Godzilla's foot is probably the most Godzilla-ish explanation.
Well, it's innocuous, so it leaves it off the playing field, so you really don't have to worry about building an arc around it. It just becomes a little device itself just to move
Yes,
the story along, right?
right.
Kind of like an anchor point. So we're looking for the Dream Zone, looking for the Dream Stone. We don't have to worry about it until the very end. when whoever's holding the Dreamstone has to make a decision on what to do with said Dreamstone. Like,
Yeah,
and that brings us back full circle to what you said about Superman's choices.
right. The Dreamstone becomes just a plot point that isn't really the major driving factor. The major driving factor of the story is just to get these guys all together for a giant fight, right?
Right.
So if you haven't read the story, it's worth picking up if you haven't read it. If you have read it, share what your thoughts are with us. In the meantime, my power ring is blinking, and we have a Godzilla-sized amount of listener feedback to go through.
Love it.
So we'll come back in a second and we'll start out with some of your messages. I'm not sure if we're going to get through all of them tonight, but we'll at least get through some of them.
All right.
In brightest day or blackest night, there's only one place to listen to the best in Green Lantern. That's the podcast of Oa.
The first message is from Fred the Tank 8386. Fred has a comment about the casting of Kyle Chandler as Hal Jordan. Transmitting in 3, 2, 1.
A 59-year-old Hal Jordan is awful. Terrible decision to sideline him and replace him with John, especially so early. We should see him be the main Green Lantern for a few years.
Hey, Fred the Tank, thanks for responding to our last episode and adding your comments. I couldn't have said any better myself. You and I are on the same wavelength. Yeah, I can't really see much else other than that. I'm hoping that our mutual feelings about the show, I hope we're proven wrong. I honestly do. I want to be wrong. Just my gut won't let me. I've been burned too many times. I just can't. I won't know until it comes out how I really feel. I just know how I feel right now. And you're saying the same things, and a lot of people are saying the same things that we're saying.
Now you see and then if you come from Gunn's perspective, how do you battle that, right? Like you've made that choice, right? Okay, so this is the decision I'm making.
You don't make the choice.
Okay. But and his fantasy, right, from where he's sitting right now, he's like, all right, well, he's sitting there weeks ago. I got Kyle Chandler. Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and pen this guy. He's gonna be Hal Jordan and stuff like that, right? So you solidify that, you get into that deal. Next thing you know, it gets leaked or whatever. He doesn't announce it. Somebody announces it. I don't care who announces it. But at the same time, it's out there. And then comes your land attack, right? Now, I don't know what the split is on who's happy about this decision or who's not. My point is they're yet again, got themselves into a situation where it's contentious
Mhm.
before anything's been done. And all it is contentious over something as innocuous as somebody's effing age, right? Which is the stupidest contentious point you could have, dictating what is going to be made moving forward when you produce this Green Lantern series, right? So take yourself, for instance. You're already at odds on it, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Okay. You and I do a podcast devoted to Green Lanterns. We've been doing this for years now, years and years and years, a lot of content and stuff like that. You're a bigger voice for the Green Lantern universe than I am. And I come on, right? And then we've probably garnered a lot more voices. I don't know what the split is for who's happy about this decision and who's not. I'd be curious to see what the temperament is, to see what kind of ratio it is. But I would have to say that if you're Gunn and company, you should be smart enough to be able to read that kind of standing when it comes to your fan base. If you're
Right.
not, you're not doing it for the right reasons and you're a damn fool, right? So, but I go back to my point. My point is here we are yet again creating something and we have a contentious point, right?
Right.
And it's all WB is built on is everything they come out with gets picked apart before it even has a chance to come out, right? Doesn't matter what Gunn says. I don't care what anybody says. Oh, that's not true. This isn't true. That's not true. It doesn't matter. It's already had the trajectory to go this route because of its reputation. And that's where I think a lot of DC's problems is their stupid reputation for the surmountable amount of stupid decisions that they continue to make on the back end of things, right?
Right.
Kyle Chandler's another one. I didn't rail real hard, but I will say it was a stupid decision because you're basing that decision off something that you want. And I get it. You want to build your universe. That's fine. but don't do it at the expense of your fan base. It's going to be split because of it, because
Right.
you're going to lose a garner. You're going to lose a lot of your viewership.
You want to build these franchises on the goodwill with your fan base
Yeah.
and be able to bring in the non-fan base, right? You need to try to appeal to both. And if you look at the most successful projects, they've usually do that. So Gunn and um
Saffron.
yep, and Tom King, who's involved with this, Tom King in particular has to realize that your average Green Lantern fan, the person who really loves the Green Lantern franchise, doesn't want to see a 60-year-old Hal Jordan. So why would you cast it that way unless you have a particular reason to? He can be a veteran, as we talked about. You can be a veteran Green Lantern and still be in your 40s. If you made him 40 something, he'd be 10 years older than John. You're still good with your mentor relationship. So why go from 40 to nearly 60? So we as fans are only left to conclude, well, why are they doing that? Well, the obvious reason is because you're trying to sideline them and get them off the table,
Hmm.
which now you've created that air of contentiousness.
Right.
Uh, you have to know that going in, and you have to expect that the fans are going to look at it and they're going to dissect it and ask themselves, why are they doing that? And unless you say something about why you're doing it, you're letting us fill in the blanks. And you either have, I think you have people like ourselves who want to see Hal in his prime, and then you have fans who are let's face it, they're Justice League cartoon fans who want to see John Stewart as the Green Lantern, and they're applauding this because they're like, that means my guy is going to be the main guy.
Hmm.
My point is why can't they both be main guys?
Right.
Why did we have to, you know, we've come off of the abysmal Beware My Power animated film. They should have learned the lesson from that because that movie got trashed by reviewers. It sold poorly. Uh, Nobody has a good word to say about it, even the Jon Stewart fans. So why would you open yourselves up to that kind of criticism? You've already created that air of anxiety about what you're going to do because of how Warner Brothers has treated this franchise, and now you're going to give you basically you threw gasoline on a fire, right?
Well, and my other question is, and somebody's got to help me out with this. I mean, because I'm baffled by this. Tom King, I don't understand why they would choose Tom King. Now, I am not trying to say that Tom King's a bad person, or he's a
No.
great writer. He's done great stuff in comic books. Awesome, talented, whatever. But why Tom King? He doesn't have the 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 building mythos of Green Lantern lore that other writers have vested into these characters. The limit of his imagination, as far as I can tell, or not the limit, but I would assume that okay, he knows maybe Kyle Rayner a little bit because he did Omega Man, but
Mhm.
what Green Lantern stuff has he done that's potentially worth the fact that he should be behind a Mega Blaster series, you know?
He certainly isn't a big proponent of the Green Lantern franchise. Now he did use Guy Gardner in his um one of his miniseries, which I'm not sure he wrote in particularly well. He wrote Heroes in Crisis, which was panned pretty hardly.
Yeah,
And a lot of fans pull out the whole thing where Hal Jordan is talking to the therapeutic robots, the
right,
psychoanalyst robots, and says, I don't even know what willpower is, which people thought that was bad characterization. I thought it was perfect characterization because Hal would not be heartfelt to a robot. Sorry. He
right.
would, if anything, would play it obtusely. But he did write that really good Green Lantern Dark Side special where Hal was the god of light. That was exceptional. And I remember when he was writing Omega Man, I got to meet Tom King and interview him at I think it was Baltimore Comic Con. And this is before he hit big. So this is when Sheriff of Babylon was coming out. This was when Omega Men had come out, and it was after it had been announced it was canceled and then brought back again. So it was pretty early in his DC career. It was before Tom King became the Tom King.
Right.
And he and I got to chat a little bit on and off mic when I interviewed him. And he said to me, Hal Jordan to him is one of the funnest characters to write. So that makes me question it even more. So I'm like, well, if that's because why would you want to make him 60 years old? What's the point? I
Right.
honestly was a little optimistic about him being attached to it because of that whole Dark Side War special. Because to me, that was one of the best single Green Lantern issues written in quite some time, and it still stands up to me as one of the best stories I've read in a long time. So I was kind of more optimistic than not, and then this came out, and obviously, so I don't know what they're thinking. I mean, and Tom King has said that he's very excited about Kyle Chandler. He thinks this is his favorite casting. So make of it what you will. I mean, could they de-age him a little bit with technology? Yeah, but why bother? So I don't know. And people want to say on the bright side, well, maybe we'll get some prequel stuff. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, but then you're talking, okay, then you're going to recast and then have a younger Hal Jordan.
Right. Exactly. It's
So
easier.
Here we go, round two, you know?
It's easier to make a younger actor older than it is to make an older actor younger, right?
Yeah, it is. I mean, at this day,
Anyway,
you give another 20 years, AI will be taking
right.
over everything.
And,
So we
and
ain't
I
got to worry about it.
and I think we made it clear. I have nothing against Kyle Chandler. I think he's a great actor. He would have been a Hal Jordan choice for me 20 years ago, but not now.
Maybe,
Same with Tom Cruise. Not that I'm a huge Tom Cruise fan, but yeah, you could make the analogy of, because Pete Mitchell and Top Gun, that he kind of already played Hal. He was a natural fit in the 80s. But now I don't want to see that.
right? No, me neither.
Anyway,
Anyway,
we're beating this dead horse, and we were only on the first one.
we are. Sorry, man. All my fault.
The
Let's
scab
go on to the next one and we'll beat that dead horse too.
a scab hasn't even formed yet, and we're already picking at it. All right, Powering, give us the next message.
The next message is from Cloned Avenger, who has some feedback on a number of topics. Transmitting in 3, 2, 1.
Green Lantern number 15 was fantastic. Jeremy Adams' writing and characterization for Hal Jordan has been spot on. I loved everything about Hal using the Batwolf. It ended in true Hal Jordan fashion. Probably been my favorite issue in the past few months. In regards to hearing the Kyle Chandler casting, at first I was definitely upset. I was ready to start Heat 2.0. Lol. I also did not want an older Hal, as I said in the last video. That said, since this seems to be the direction they're going, I am hoping that Hal Jordan, Barry Allen, Oliver Queen, etc. are all close to the same age, which can maybe give us a prequel timeline for movies, TV series, and animation. I think we get a look at a younger Hal Jordan in flashbacks in the show. Damon Lindelof loved to use flashback sequences in Lost. I am being as hopeful I can with this. This may be DC's last attempt at doing Green Lantern in live action, so I will support it until it disrespects the legacy of Green Lantern/Hal Jordan. I am really hoping Hal doesn't end up like Luke Skywalker in The Last Jedi. I don't want a bitter and jaded Hal who lost his wife and way of life. I guess time will tell. Hopefully us Hal Jordan fans will be proven wrong with this casting. It just feels a little bleak right now. I don't want to see Hal having to take his medication and change his depends before going out for a mission. Whatever they do with Hal, I just want him to be respected as the GL legend they're saying he is. As far as Green Lantern's doing a detective story for the series, my mind went immediately to Black Hand being involved. I completely understand why Myron's upset. I'm upset. But I am going to be optimistic for this Green Lantern TV series. We have waited so long for new live-action Green Lantern. Also, the intro to Myron's rant with it detecting Red Lantern energy was hilarious. Also, Ryan Reynolds needs to know his role and shut his mouth. And Myron, your rant was great.
All right, Cloned Avenger. We're gonna beat the dead horse again, right? So let's first talk about Green Lantern 15. Jeremy Adams knocking it out of the park. Been happy with his full year run. I'm also super duper excited the fact that Jeremy Adams is taking over the reins of Aquaman, but that's a different story for another time. So let's talk about your Kyle Chandler casting. So you got some points that probably go back and forth. I don't think they fall in line with Myron though, and not as vehemently as Myron's though. And while we don't want to beat that dead horse again, I'm still going to say that I'll wait and see what kind of product we get. but I'm going to do it tentatively because I don't buy it and I don't think that they're doing it right. And I'm going to leave it at that. So we don't have to talk about it till the cows come home. Ooh.
The cows have come home, they left again, and then they've come back again. Um, I do like the analogy though that Clone Avenger makes about Luke Skywalker,
Yeah.
because those sequel movies, how do you treat a franchise wrong, right?
Right.
Star Wars 7, the death of Han Solo. Star Wars 8, the death of Luke Skywalker. Star Wars 9, the death of Princess Leia. I mean, come on. Um,
And
so
we could devote a whole like 10 podcasts to the crap that was. But anyway,
that could be a whole series. We could start another podcast just on that kind of stuff.
right.
What boy, that would be bleak. I'd end up
It
being able
would
to
be.
get
It'd be
drinking a lot.
wordy. It'd be wordy.
Oh yeah. I do like his notion about Black Hand potentially being
Yeah,
involved.
that'd be cool because
I think that
I'm
would
a
be
huge
very
Han
cool.
fan. Yeah.
I'm much more positive to that than it being Hal Jordan being Parallax behind the scenes.
I
You
don't
know, because
like that.
that's been floated, right? That Hal Jordan is actually the villain of the story, and he's already turned to Parallax, just that nobody knows it yet.
God.
Um, and I think part of my emotion comes from the fact that I'm 60, right? I want to see Hal done right before I croak. So time is running out for me, man, and I want to see it. I want to see it done right. And I thank you for co-signing on my Ryan Reynolds rant. That guy just needs to shut the hell up.
Man, I'm
Um,
sick of that fool. I really did. I have a public service announcement, Reynolds. If you're out there, shut up, man. Get over Green Lantern and move on with your life and just be quiet.
and I'm glad you appreciate the rant. I mean, a lot of it was very honest and emotional and truthful, but at the same time, I know people are waiting for me to have that kind of a response. Uh, so did I hold back a little bit? Yeah. Did I go a little overboard? Yeah. But whatever, right? It's all
Yeah,
good at the end of the day.
we're entitled to our opinion. I mean, 90% of the internet certainly voices their
My
their
my honest wish is that a year or so from now, whenever we get to see this thing, if I'm still around, is to be able to look into the camera and say, "Boy, was I wrong." That's what I want more than anything in the world.
or or we could have this playing as a video on your gravestone, right? When you're gone, and you're like, "I'm so sorry that the world let you down, Myron."
Maybe an apology video from Tom King.
Lord
Uh,
Avenger, man, thanks a lot. Thanks for writing in. Always
as
sitting in
always, we
incredible.
appreciate it.
Mm.
Power Ring, why don't you go ahead and give us another one?
The next message is from War Lion, who is also commenting on a couple of topics. Transmitting in 3, 2, 1.
Hey guys, I'm going to rant about the casting a bit. First of all, I don't think that Gunn will do Hal a disservice, as Gunn isn't like the Tomorrowverse guys who can't make a character shine without destroying another in the process. As for the age of the character, I think that it's still a thing we don't know about. Obviously, since Gunn announced that Batman will have Damian, that the Leaguers except for Superman, and maybe W, since she is a goddess and doesn't age like humans. So she'll be played by a young actress will be at least in their 40s, which we're now seeing with 2 Lanterns. But we don't know in universe how old are the characters. We also got a 50-year-old Booster Gold in Ted Cords, ins Blue Beetle is canon, and we got a confirmation regarding the actor playing Booster. We saw Sam Jackson play a 30-years-old Nick Fury in Captain Marvel. So with writing, CGI and that stuff, things can still go great for us fans. The issue for me is Kyle not having a multiple projects contract, which might be a false thing, but might also be Gunn testing how this casting will go with people, and the idea that if it doesn't work, he can recast, which is why I'm thinking that Halent the show will be 40 years old. Or maybe they'll play with one of the million ways they deeged Hall within the comics. So maybe it's Kyle, waiting to see if the show succeeds, so not before committing long-term. Nathan Fillion has a few projects because Guy, for better or worse, isn't a character with huge fan base like Hal or John, so him being 40 or 60 doesn't matter like it does with Hal and John. Also, as you pointed out, Myron, we don't have any castings for Carol, Tom, Jim, or any of Hal's supporting cast. And we aren't even sure that they're in the show, since it's easy to have Hal doing Corb stuff and not have any of those people in the story. And that makes me relieved, as we're not yet hammering there is a 60 years old Carol who has a 25 years old kid with grumpy old Hal, or whatever we all got as a vibe from Kyle's casting. Overall, I think that if Gunn didn't know how Hal is important, he would have left the show to be about John, Simon, Jess, and Alan, as it was originally intended in the previous 300 drafts, written for the show before Gunn took over DC Studios. I also think that regardless of how things play out, we should try and be optimistic about it, since frankly, there is nothing worse that could happen to the GL fandom that didn't happen because of the Reynolds movie or the Tomorrowverse. Side note, prepare for an old Barry Phil, since the Titans seem to be a priority of the new DCU, and Wally will most likely be the main Flash. As for Parallax and Waller, it obviously didn't come to play, so I was wrong, but I forgot a minor detail from Green Arrow 5 and 6, which explains the deal. There was no old Oliver in the story. That was a play Waller. Parallax and Merlin were playing on Oliver, and the person pretending to be Ollie was Merlin. Sorry for the long message, and hopefully I didn't bore you with it.
Hey, Warline, great to hear from you as always. Comparing Gunn to the Tomorrowverse guys, I guess, it's funny because I wouldn't have compared the Tomorrowverse guys to the guys that they turned out to be. When Jim Krieg was the producer on Green Lantern, the animated series, and he was the lead behind the Tomorrowverse stuff, he even wrote that atrocious Crisis on Infinite Earths three-parter and made Hal look like crap. So I wouldn't have expected that to come from him either. And I certainly would have expected one of the writers of Green Lantern, the animated series, to write Beware My Power as horribly as that was written. And I think the guy's a great guy. I mean, he wrote a book, and when Green Lantern, the animated series, was in the air, and he actually called me on my cell phone and asked me if he could send me a copy of his book to write a review on Amazon. Uh, just an awful nice guy. And he appreciated the reviews I wrote at the time because I was dissecting the writing and talking about how much love and care they put into the mythos. And then when you see that steaming pile of dung that came out in the Tomorrowverse, my respect goes completely out the window. I've lost all respect for them. So my approach to Gunn, listen, Guardians of the Galaxy, my favorite Marvel movie, hands down. Second one, not as much. Third one, really didn't like. But that was in part because of things that happened outside of the Guardians of the Galaxy's movies. Do I think Gunn is trying to intentionally do something bad with Hal? I don't
think he
know.
knows. I don't think he knows
Yeah.
that kind of concept.
Yep.
What we're talking about, I don't think Gunn is at that level.
Right. And I don't know, even though Gunn is overseeing things, is Gunn really that hands-on with the show? I don't know. Is it loose enough that he just says, I want a Green Lantern to use in the movies and is letting the people in charge of the show make those decisions? Maybe. Or, is he rubber stamping it? Maybe. I don't know. I don't think we're going to see any of the supporting cast. I think this show is going to be set entirely around the murder mystery. Will there be some flashbacks to things in Coast City and stuff? I don't know. I don't know if there'll be a reason to. All I gotta say is thank God Betty White isn't around because she might be cast as Carol Ferris. Sorry. And the only thing about the contract, traditionally in Hollywood, if you're casting a TV show, you want to get as much in that initial contract as possible because if something is successful, the actor is going to want more money to do more of it. So you want to get as much in their contract up front as you can while the expectations aren't as high. So if this show really takes off and they want to do something with the movie, they're going to have to negotiate with Kyle Chandler. And if it isn't in his contract, he's going to want a lot more money. So they were in a better position financially to have done it up front. And so that's why I'm very cautious about thinking that they're going to use Hal and Kyle Chandler in any way, shape, or form beyond this first season of the show, because apparently it's not in the contract. So I don't know. Could they de-age him? Yeah, but why? I don't know. And I don't think we're going to see some of this stuff. I don't think we're going to see a lot of. I think the Green Lanterns are there just because they want to do something with Green Lanterns, and so they come up with this plot to make this murder mystery thing, and it's going to be about them in this town. And the budget for the show is going to be big enough. They're not going to do a whole bunch of stuff with showing John's family and Hal's family and their backstories. You might see some flashbacks, but that's it. I don't think we're going to see these people as big characters.
Right.
But
Right.
and do I think we'll get an old Barry? I think if we get a Barry at all, um, he'll be old.
I'm gonna go with that all. Right.
Yeah, yeah. All right. Well, why don't we take one more and then we'll save the rest for the next episode, Phil? What do you think?
That sounds good. Let's do that.
Okay. All right, Power, why don't you give us our last message for now?
The last message is from a new listener, Temple277. He has some feedback on several topics. Transmitting in 3, 2, 1.
Can't wait for a new episode, guys. A new viewer here. Really love the channel thus far. Only criticism I have is I hope y'all get to do these more frequently, because it has been 3 weeks now since this last episode, when I'm writing it. As for the casting, I am not happy with the GL news for the movies side as well, and pretty much agree with what you guys just said here. However, I do hope that we get a Red Lantern show once, though with the grounded talk James gave us, I'm not so sure anymore. I wouldn't want to watch Atrocitus wearing jeans and not even using his ring, being stuck on Earth, the whole show, fighting a businessman, honestly. As y'all depend on GL so much, I do with my favorite character, Martian Manhunter, if they ever use him in anything, which Batu, I hope they give him his own show or a movie. I hope they do it well. Because if that's a disappointment as well with this GL show, having red flags left and right too, I'm going to just leave this thing and stick with what we have, comics. Speaking of my boy Martian Manhunter, the description of this show fits my boy more than actual GLs. Martian Manhunter is an actual detective who could travel to both space and around Earth. So you could make this work, yet you use it on a GL show, which should be more space opera than what it sounds like. This is going to be like. Alright, I said what I wanted to. And again, love the channel, keep up doing the great work, and hope y'all just do these episodes more frequently.
Right on, Temple 277. Good to hear from you. Yeah, it's been a few weeks. Myron explained a little bit about Halloween being a contentious period in his continuity issues. So he's setting up all his Halloween decorations for the multiverse. So that said, casting. Everybody's touching on casting. I don't think we're going to get beyond this casting thing, right? So, I mean, we've beat that in the ground. I think we know where I'm grounded. I think we know where Myron's grounded. And I think until we know more, I don't think we can do anything more, right? I mean, because
Yeah.
everything's been said. Let's see. What else? We're talking about Red Lanterns. Hope we get the Red Lantern show once. I don't think that's ever going to happen. I mean, you might get an appearance by Red Lanterns, and I doubt an Atrocitus will ever
I think
appear.
I think that's the thing at the bottom of outside of the depiction of Hal being old that disturbs me a little bit is that there's so much Green Lantern mythology that is ripe for adaptation.
Mhm.
And I don't think we're going to see it. Or if we do, it's going to be so bastardized from the original content and source material that it's not going to be the way that people want to see it. So yeah, I don't know as if he's going to go there. I I mean, I've talked before and I realize Temple 277 is fairly new, so it probably doesn't have the history of some of the conversations we've had, but the, there's you could really develop the Green Lantern universe and do a lot with it. And in a TV show format, I think you could do a ton of it. But like what you're saying with, I think this does fit Martian Manhunter more than it does Green Lanterns.
Yeah.
Thinking Green Lantern concept and grounded comedy, or grounded crime procedural, those two don't exactly mix for me. Green Lantern is cosmic. It's so to see two Green Lanterns stuck on Earth trying to solve a murder mystery, unless it's going to go into space at some point, it doesn't seem like a good fit. I think, like you said, it's a perfect fit for Martian Manhunter. I'd be all over that, especially if it was Martian Manhunter and maybe the Question teaming up together, or some kind of a partnership there. I think it'd be great. Martian Manhunter is such a great character. He's often underutilized because they focus so much on him being Superman light versus being this detective-y type character. I think it would be great for that character. In fact, I'd like to see him show up. That would be cool. Um, because he's an actual detective. Green
Right.
Lanterns aren't really, I mean, if you're playing up the space cop angle, could you say they're detectives? I suppose. I've never been one to, as much as I like the Jeff Johns run, I never like the space cop analogy as much as I do like the idea of space knights or space sheriffs. Or
Well, and I very rarely sit there and read about them going into a crime scene and doing a lot of forensics, right? I mean, I
right.
don't. I mean,
Oh,
I'll look at my magnifying glass at this fingerprint.
why would you call a cosmic two super powerful cosmic characters to solve an earthbound murder when Martian Manhunter, Batman, Barry Allen would make more logical choices, right? Unless there's some cosmic element to it, Green Lanterns wouldn't be the first thing jumping into my head. So,
Like you said, I mean, the same analogy can be drawn if you had the Guardians of the Galaxy planted in a Wild West. Like, okay, that doesn't
right,
fit, right? I mean, well,
right,
why? Well, why?
yeah. And regarding the frequency of the show, admittedly, we have not been as frequent as I'd like to be. I mean, I'd like to record every other week, or every week, as long as I could get the editing done in time and I didn't fall behind. Phil and I both work in education, and I know Phil's New York's education schedule in the St. Louis area in Missouri, where Phil is, don't have the same schedule. But for me personally, September and October are my busiest, most hectic months of the year. And then you tack Halloween onto it. And this year I took a week's vacation and went out of state. Uh, this year in particular, it's been more difficult. And there for a while, we were doing it every other week. And I'm hoping once we get October out of the way, maybe we can record every other week, and then I can edit every other week and get them cranked out. So one week we're recording, one week I'm editing and publishing, and then we're back into a cycle again. That's what I'd like to do. And certainly there's enough things to talk about, especially as we get closer and closer to Lanterns and some of the new stuff that's coming out, because we haven't talked about the newest issue of Green Lantern, and we haven't talked about the Civil Core special, and then Green Lantern Dark just came out. So there's other things to be talking about. And we haven't in a long time done any of our retrospective stuff where we go back and
No,
look at old things. So
we've been,
there's
I don't
certainly
even where
more
we are
coming.
on Rebirth.
Oh gosh, yeah. Well, and speaking of Rebirth, this is the 20-year anniversary of Green Lantern Rebirth. We definitely should be doing an episode doing kind of a retrospective on that.
Okay, yeah, that's a good idea.
But we'll try to do more content. I'm glad you're digging it. I was thinking about, when you mentioned in your comment on YouTube that you were a big fan of Martian Manhunter, and I was trying to think of whether there were any Martian Manhunter podcasts or anything I could recommend, but I'm not aware of any. But if anybody out there knows of any Martian Manhunter content that we could recommend to Temple 277, please feel free to share it so we can help a brother out.
I'm still hoping one day to start my Wonder Twins podcast, but I don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah, you have to get a person to team up with, and one of you can be the form of, and you can do the whole.
Yeah, I'd have to do something like that. I had to pay somebody probably. Temple, that was awesome. Thanks. Good to hear from you.
Yeah,
Uh,
absolutely.
keep writing in some more. Hey, and if you get a chance, go back because we did record pretty much weekly during the pandemic.
Yeah, there for a while
A lot
during
of
the
content
pandemic.
there.
Boy, we did a lot of stuff during the pandemic.
Right.
Um, and I'd like to get back to doing some of that stuff too, so that was fun. But all right, we're gonna put a bookmark in it. We've got a few more pieces of listener feedback based on episode 250, which we will then use next time. In fact, I think there's 5 more comments that we'll need to respond to next time. So
Yeah.
we'll let it pile up a little bit, but we'll get back to it. That's for sure. So Powering, why don't you tell everybody how they can be a part of the show, and we will come back and wrap it up.
You can become a part of the show by leaving a message up to 1 minute long on our voicemail line. Call us at 406-POD-OA. That's 406-763-6362. You can also email us at podcast@blogofoa.com. We'd love to hear from you.
All right, fellow Owens. Hey, that was a killer episode. Good times. We got to trash talk some more about Kyle Chandler's that poor sap being cast. Now, before we get off here, though, think about how he feels and from his perspective, right? I mean, he's a nice guy. I mean, from what I've seen in interviews and stuff, he seems like a decent person.
Oh
He's got
yeah.
good acting quality. I've seen him in other stuff and, cool and all. But imagine him sitting there trolling through Twitter and seeing all the comments about, oh, too old, too old, too old, right? And imagine how he feels, and then incorporate that into your passion on doing that said project, you know, being deflated because everybody's railing on you because of your age. Welcome to the comic book world, Kyle Chandler. This is where it's at. And you know what? No, nobody's going to let their talons out of you. You're done for.
Now I feel bad, man.
No, you should feel bad because he signed up for this. I mean,
Right.
you got to understand, you sign up for it, man. You're signing up for a gauntlet.
Yeah.
I'm sure these guys are warned going in, man, that social media is not polite by any means, and the internet's not a safe place.
I mean, they showed video of Aaron Pierre working out, getting ready for Jon Stewart. They haven't
Yeah,
shown anything with Kyle Chandler.
not
Like,
working out, apparently.
I,
Not pulling those weights down that thing or whatever
or
it was.
taking some Metamucil or something.
Stock it up on his, it depends. Oh, great.
Oh,
You're gonna have that astronaut story with that one that drove down to Texas when they were on the Depends. Remember that?
oh
Remember that?
yeah, 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 yeah.
Maybe that's anyway.
Oh,
It was a fun.
it's a never-ending supply of source material for comments, I tell you.
It is. But you know what? Fast forward, he could do an awesome job. It could be a great series, and we could be sitting here saying, you know what? I'll be the first to admit I'm an idiot and I'm wrong. You know?
Right. I'll be the first one to say, boy, was I wrong. I
Yeah.
hope I want to be that.
Yeah.
But in my mind right now, the first construct I'm going to see Hal Jordan doing is a walker, you know. Um, so we'll see. We'll see. Anyway, next episode, we need to talk about Civil War Special and Green Lantern 16. And depending on when we record, maybe 17. Depends on when the issue comes out. I don't remember just now. But we'll be back soon. Got to edit this episode. Got to work it around Halloween, but we will get it out there within the next week or so. So we'll be back soon to talk about all that good stuff. Thank you guys for hanging on and sticking around with us through all this stuff. And pretty soon we'll see you again. And until next time, treat each other well. Keep that power ring charged and make every day your brightest day. Take care. Thanks so much for watching this Green Lantern video from the blog of Oa. If you liked what you saw, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can find even more great Green Lantern videos, reviews, podcasts, and more at our main website, www.blogofoa.com. So until next time, keep your power ring charged and make every day your brightest day.